Why did Dooku choose to reveal the Sith to Obi-Wan Kenobi on Geonosis? Greetings, and welcome back Acolytes and lore junkies alike. The archives have been expecting you. When Obi-Wan was snooping around on Geonosis, he caught the former Jedi Master Dooku conspiring with the Separatists to secede from the Republic itself. Upon Kenobi being caught, however, Dooku would visit him in his holding cell. He mentioned how this entire thing was a misunderstanding, before dropping the bombshell that a Sith Lord by the name of Darth Sidious had infiltrated the Senate and was controlling the Republic. This was not only the truth, but it was also the very first time the Jedi Order would hear the name Darth Sidious. At the time, Dooku mentioned that Obi-Wan should join him, help him crush this Sith threat. This is a very strange thing for Dooku to do as a Sith Lord. Had he not revealed Sidious here, the plans of the Sith may have been further veiled from the Jedi, but instead, he took this risk. Many have come to believe that this offer to Obi-Wan was genuine, that he truly wanted to help in betraying his new master Sidious. But as Yoda always says, the dark side clouds everything, and not all is as it seems with this interaction. In today's Holocron upload, we are going to discuss why Dooku revealed that Darth Sidious was in fact real, and revealed him to the Jedi, and why Palpatine ordered him to do it. The subject of who Darth Sidious was to the Jedi is a fascinating topic with many layers. For 3 years, the Jedi were caught in a knot of confusion. They struggled to accept whether or not Sidious was even real. In the recent months, we've explored this topic from several different angles. We've talked about why the Jedi believed that Sidious was a myth, why they were confused by the structure of the Rule of Two. We even explored how the Jedi eventually found out Sidious was real, and how they almost caught him due to a slip-up by Viceroy Gunray of all people. But before we get into this subject, and to let it rest, we wanted to go all the way back to the roots of the entire thing. The moment that Dooku tells Obi-Wan the truth of Darth Sidious. There exists an idea surrounding this scene, one that insists that Dooku was showing the last vestiges of his righteousness by doing this. We've heard many state that if Obi-Wan had only taken this offer, they may have betrayed Sidious successfully, and even brought Dooku back to the light. Could this be true? If we know one thing about Dooku, is that he's an incredibly complex man, one with a compelling journey to the dark side and layered motivation. He had a difficult relationship with the Jedi once they began becoming overly political. He observed how the High Council bent the knee to the will of the Senate that was full of corrupt politicians. Big corporations and greedy schemes were lining the pockets of the senators, causing stagnation in the imposing of rule of law. This caused injustice to reign supreme in the galaxy, and because the ever-squabbling Senate could never reach a consensus, one of two things kept happening. Either the Jedi Order sat back and did nothing, shirking their duties as peacekeepers while innocents suffered and died, or the Jedi were sent on missions that should have been solved by a military, resulting in needless Jedi casualties. Dooku was already infuriated by all of this, but then there was Qui-Gon Jinn, his Padawan, his friend. When he was executed by Maul, everything changed. Filled with sorrow and vengeance, Dooku departed the Jedi Order and contemplated hunting down Sidious himself. That was until Palpatine approached him personally and revealed his true identity. The two had a deep discussion where they realized their goals and aims for the galaxy were actually not so different. Both desired to have peace and order imposed on a chaotic galaxy, but this could not happen so long as the Jedi were in power, acting like the lapdogs of a corrupt institution. And long story short, Dooku was inducted into the Order of Sith Lords, given the name Darth Tyrannus. So why did we mention all of this? It's to demonstrate the well-known fact that Dooku is not like other Sith Lords. The Jedi were correct in assuming that he was a political idealist, but they didn't think he had the capacity for real evil. In truth, there was a time when he didn't, and so many have come to assume that Dooku was never truly a Sith Lord to begin with. He may have allied himself with Sidious and called himself Sith, but he lacked the Sith yellow eyes. He avoided killing Jedi personally, at least at the beginning of the war, and he seemed to vouch for justice. But that's just the reason that many jumped to the conclusion that was offered to Obi-Wan, and the fact that it could have been genuine. He knew Sidious was evil and had to be taken down. He just wanted to do it his way, and to have the Padawan of his Padawan, basically his metaphorical grandson, by his side to do all of it. This is a heartwarming way to view this scene, where Dooku pleads with Obi-Wan to join him. Unfortunately though, it is also naive. The reality of the situation is far more sinister. Dooku may have had the purest of intentions starting, but the dark side corrupts all. No amount of heroics can change what the dark side does to a person when its venom infiltrates their mind and their spirit. For 10 years, Dooku trained with Sidious and embraced the dark side. He gave himself over to his rage and his hatred. He was even amused at the idea that Yoda would call it perfecting evil. Dooku may have once championed justice, but he now only used that part of himself as a facade. In truth, he hated beings lesser than him. He thought of those who used prosthetics like Anakin as half-human abominations. He despised non-human species, and thought of the beings of the galaxy as a hive mind of insects in need of a strong hand to rule them. He wanted to replace the Jedi Order with a dark mirror, and state a Sith army where he was the Grand Master. Dooku became a snake who enjoyed cruelty, and by the end of his life, he personally murdered dozens of Jedi by his own hands, and thousands of innocents. We say all of this to dismiss the idea that he had any heroic motivations when he revealed Sidious. In fact, the entire thing had been one big ploy concocted by Sidious himself. Quite appropriate. In the book aptly named Labyrinth of Evil, we get many in-depth insights on the twisted maze of a plan that Sidious has created. The Jedi are closer than ever to finding the identity of the Sith Lord, and Obi-Wan and Anakin are following Palpatine's winding trail of yarn all the way back to its source. It is within this book where we get to peer into the thoughts of Dooku, who is scrambling around to rectify the mistakes which could lead to Sidious's exposure. The two Sith Lords meet on Coruscant. They discuss how they can turn situations like this to their benefit. And it is in this conversation that Dooku references Geonosis to Sidious. This is what the novel reads. Sidious had the ability to see deep into the future, but there was always the unexpected. With the power of the dark side, however, came flexibility. Having traced Fett to Kamino, Obi-Wan Kenobi had turned up on Geonosis. All at once, here was Qui-Gon Jinn's former Padawan, right under Dooku's nose. But when he had informed Sidious of Obi-Wan's presence there, Sidious had only said, "Allow events to play out, Darth Tyrannus, for our plans are unfolding exactly as I have foreseen. The Force is very much with us." Dooku did not keep it hidden from his master that his grandson was on Geonosis snooping around. He did not try to take the opportunity to turn on Sidious, because for the longest time, Dooku was deceived into believing that he and Palpatine had a real, genuine partnership, and so he obeyed almost everything that Sidious said, following his plans to the letter. He highly respected the fact that not only was Palpatine talented in foresight, but unlike the Jedi, he actually used it to change events, to take hold of the future. And that's why he trusted Sidious, even when his master ordered him to reveal himself to the Jedi. Labyrinth of Evil then goes on to say this. On Geonosis, he had deliberately allowed them to pursue him, just as Sidious had instructed him to do. Also as instructed, Dooku had made Obi-Wan aware of the existence of Darth Sidious, as a means of confusing the Jedi by telling them the truth. We talked about how Dooku used the truth to confuse and to misdirect the Jedi before, but it definitely bears repeating. By brazenly throwing the truth at the Jedi, Dooku knew that the High Council would debate themselves into stagnation. If Dooku was telling the truth, then why? What did he have to gain by betraying his master? It only makes sense that such claims were false, as it seemed impossible for a Sith Lord to be right under their nose without them having sensed it at all. Yoda ordered for the Senate to be thoroughly searched, and they secretly subjected as many senators as possible to the most extensive questioning that they could manage. But all of their investigations turned up nothing, and they couldn't go further without risking a major scandal. Then of course, even if they decided that Sidious was real or not, they were still trying to decide whether Maul had been the master or the apprentice in the Rule of Two dynamic, and they were still investigating who Darth Tyrannus was. Throwing a third Sith name in the mix violated everything they knew about the Rule of Two. Again in Labyrinth of Evil, Yoda and Obi-Wan have a discussion where they are frustrated by not knowing the sequential order of who trained who in the mix of Maul, Dooku, and Sidious. Dooku also knew of the Council's great arrogance, and he had managed to duel Yoda to a stalemate, proving that he was on par with Yoda's level of skill and power, at least in his own mind. And after Dooku claimed that he had a master, this absolutely petrified the Jedi High Council. The Council refused to believe that any Darksider stronger than Dooku could exist without them having sensed it first. And to suggest that person was not only running around but doing so right under their noses in the Senate was beyond ludicrous to them. So although it seemed majorly counterintuitive for Dooku to tell them straight up what was actually occurring, it actually worked perfectly into the Sith's hands. While the Jedi were tying themselves in a mental knot, it only served to cloud their judgment and their vision in the Force. The Sith's motives and movements remained obscure, and by the time the Jedi believes the truth of it, it was far too late. And so our point today was that Dooku's revelation of Sidious to Obi-Wan was not one made out of a desire to serve the light in his own way. He wasn't making heroic plans against a powerful master. In fact, Dooku was doing his master's bidding. It was all a ploy to weave a web of confusion. All of it was a master plan orchestrated by Sidious. Again, which is very much par for the course. But anyway, my friends, that's what we have for you today. Let us know down below what you think about this plan and this revelation. It was bold and risky, but it turned out to be a stroke of deadly genius. So tell us, if you were in Sidious's position, if the entirety of the grand plan of the Sith was on your shoulders, would you have the confidence to reveal yourself to your enemies as a means of confusing them? And until next time, my friends, may the Force be with you always, and have a great day.